So now for the last video for watercolor, you may actually want to watch this first if you're curious about what all the videos are about. I'm just going to do a little flip through of the techniques that I went over on each of the shorter videos today and show you how things dried after the fact. So this was our flat wash, wet on wet technique with just artist grade watercolor pan set. This was our ombre, 2 colors blended in the middle. Also a wet on wet technique with the student grade watercolors. This was a multi-colored, so we did 3 colors, you could do more. Same idea with the ombre. This was pink, yellow, orange, and we got some gradated colors between as they mixed. That's also wet on wet technique. These were the distress inks. This was the wet on wet technique. This was the wet on dry technique, where we just kind of splotched the colors on to a palette, and then we pressed them onto the dry page and the wet page. And then we went back on this one and we did the water drop bleaching. So these little white dots that are on here, that was where I dripped water on and let it pull the color off to get some water drop effects. This one was the wet on wet watercolor, drops in onto the palette and then smushed onto the page, wet on wet. This one was the wet on wet drop in, and it was in the shape of a heart, and the paint stayed within the shape that we had painted with water. This was the salt technique. You can see the little white speckles that came from the salt drying and pulling up some of the pigment. This was the dry on try technique, and we just made stripes. So wet paint on a dry page, and then the splatters were just inking up our paintbrush with the paint and then giving it a nice splatter effect. This was our watercolor pencil, was the red on their dresses. We colored in just everywhere on this part of her dress, and then lightly, and then added water to bring the color out. This one we did the folds and the edges, and then kind of drew the color to the center. So those 2 techniques. The top is the watercolor marker, and again we just did the edges and the shadowed areas and then pulled the water with the paintbrush. And then this was the demonstration of how I was cleaning off the brush, but that you can use this to make to color your leaves. If you want to start with it green, you can do tip to tip with the brushes and then draw it out from there. And then here is the stamped image of that, where we went from the darker green to the lighter green just by doing tip to tip, a little blue on the yellow marker and pulling it across. And then this was coloring directly on with 2 solid colors and putting water on, and this was the same with 3 colors on and layering the yellow and the lighter orange there. So the last one here is our watercolor gel crayon, just put on a palette. This was drawing directly on the page and adding water, and this was mixing it on a palette and adding water, and then using a sponge, makeup sponge, to put it onto the page and over a stencil and over a mask. So now I'm going to show you some pages in my Bible, and I've got all these paper tabs that I don't normally keep in here, and I'm just going to kind of flip through in the order of the tabs so I don't miss anything. So it'll be jumping around a little bit. This page is the watercolor markers put directly onto the stamps and then stamped onto the page after being spritzed with a little bit of water. And I wish I could get my camera back a little bit more so you could see the full thing all at once, but kind of new to this filming thing. This one is just gel crayon put directly onto the page, and then I smudged it a little bit with my finger, and then the white rings over the top are acrylic. Okay, this is a watercolor wash that goes up the side of the page, and I did it before I did the lettering. But you could do it after the lettering if you use a waterproof pen, and I did it on the other facing page as well. So that was just a flat wash with one color, wet onto wet. Okay, this is a watercolor page, except for this little patch here where I outlined the verse was actually Crayola twistable pencil, colored pencil over the top. This one is gel crayon, all of it. The background color is smudged with the makeup sponge. The flames were done by drawing directly on the page and then just kind of smudging it out a little bit. This is also gel crayon put directly onto the page. I use it a lot. Probably gel crayon, watercolor paints, and colored pencils. I love my Prismacolor colored pencils. Those are probably my top 3 mediums I use in my Bible. Okay, here's the next one. This is the gel crayon, and we actually just cut a little piece of manila folder into this cloud shape and used the edge of it, and then I used the makeup brush with the gel crayon on it and sponged along the edge, and then would move just kept moving that little template down and sponging the edge again to get the cloud effect. This was the tip-in page that we made at our first trial group meeting in October of 2015. This is the watercolor technique like the heart that I showed you, where as long as you keep the water within an outlined area and the outlined areas don't touch each other, the paint will just stay wherever you put water. And so I just kind of dripped in some of that purple and pink and blue into the letters and had wet the letters and then added the paint. This is another gel crayon page. All of the leaves and acorns and the background were all smudged gel crayon. Water added, put it on a makeup brush and smudge it in there. I didn't show you this set. This is, I didn't demonstrate this set, but I did talk about it a little bit. This is the iridescent watercolor paint. This comes from the Artist Loft brand. Michael's has a couple different brands they sell of iridescent paint. Just got a nice shiny look to it. And you can see I highlighted this verse with the white. Really pretty for the Christmas. This is the distress inks put onto the back, the yellow, green, blue, purple. And then I did the salt technique. That's what gives you all these lighter speckles. The white spots are actually acrylic paint that was sprinkled on after the moon was done in acrylic paint. The black silhouette was done in acrylic paint. And then this is gel pen for the white writing. And this was the first gel pen I had tried. I think this was like a Jelly Roll pen or possibly the Recollections white opaque pen. I really prefer the Uniball called Signo that works. It's very crisp and white, and it doesn't give you these kind of gray in your white or show the color through. This watercolor page is more of what we'll be looking at as I teach more watercolor techniques. If you are interested in doing more detailed work, this is an example of more detailed work. And again, it's just a matter of sort of lightly penciling out an idea and then painting things that aren't touching to start. So I think I actually, started with just their heads on the page, and then I filled in their darker legs, and then maybe this grass piece, leaving things between, and then as it dries you go back in and add the next layer that's touching, and you just keep layering on top and on top, and that really it looks so beautiful to me to be able to have all those colors and to see them react on the page. But just knowing that simple technique of just doing one little piece at a time really does help. This page is just a background of the smushed watercolor technique I was talking about, where you just put different colors on a palette and then drag it on the page. This is a tip-in tag, and I use tip-ins either the full page or just a tag like this, and adhere them in with washi tape. The reason I'm showing you this is because this was the distress ink, and this was put on with the dauber and the little felt pads that you can get, and it was just blended onto here, and then you can see maybe see some of the little water droplets that I added after the fact, similar to the technique we tried on the paper in that tutorial. And then also on the back, more smudging with those little felt the little felt applicator that they sell. It's Tim Holtz that sells the applicator with around the same area as the distress inks. Another much more abstract watercolor, and this would be another technique that we can work on teaching down the road if people are interested in learning more. And then this is actually gel crayon over the top of the stamp, just sponged on, and then through a stencil, the little polka dots, and then some washi tape and some hand lettering up there and here. Love those gel crayons. Okay. Here's another watercolor page, all watercolor except for the hand lettering. The shadows on the hand lettering are also watercolor. So just again, working one heart at a time, dropping in a light color and then going to a slightly darker color just to add a little depth. And then when it was all dry, I went and filled in the background between. Okay. This page is my water-soluble crayons, and they are not chalky at all. Sometimes the watercolor paints, the pan paints or the tube paints can get chalky. The nice thing about those watercolor crayons or water-soluble pastel crayons is that they are very smooth. They're not chalky at all, and no matter how much water you put on them, they do not bleed through to your other page. So here's the page on the reverse side. This is colored pencil. But you can see that that blue didn't come through at all at the top. This was a wet on dry drag technique with distress markers. I put them on my square acrylic block and then spritzed a little water on the block and drug it across the page to get just that colored background. So I hope you find the tutorials helpful. I hope you'll join us for more groups over the next months to come. In 2016, we'll be hopefully meeting every second Saturday from 10 to 1. And so I invite you to dive in and try this form of worship and meditation, and hope you've enjoyed all the tutorials and been patient with all my talking and talking.